Today I want to do something a little bit different. I want to preview the books I'm going to read next month using something that I was inspired to do by a fellow booktuber, Lit Wizard, where he judged the book based on the first line. So I'm going to take the books that I'm going to read, or try to read, this is my reading list for next month, and read the first line of each book and tell you what I think. And at the end of the video, I'm going to get into a little bit of why this is so impactful to me, why I was inspired, and use it as a way to talk about how we decide what books we want to read, especially if you're a new reader and you have no idea where to begin. So welcome to Storywise, and let's get into my next month's book reading list by looking at only the first line and giving initial thoughts. I'll also add maybe why it's on the list. First up is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is my first ever, I believe, Nobel Prize winning book, Nobel Prize for Literature. So this is one that came up on a list of must reads, and part of what I'm going through is reading fantasy, reading every genre I can, using lists to help me find the books that I need to read that might impact my own writing, my own understanding of literature, and change some, who knows, ways I feel about literature as a whole. And this was one of those books. So let's read the first line. Of course, I am skipping the forewords or the prologues and jumping right into chapter 1 of these books. The first line is, 124 was spiteful. It's a very short sentence, and it means nothing to me. I don't know what to make of it, but I do know this book is about slavery and about escaping it, as well as being haunted by the ghost of, I believe, the main character's baby. Again, I don't know because I haven't really read much about the book, and that I'll get into later at the end of why I didn't do that, but I have that very, very rudimentary knowledge. I also know it's more of a poetry, so 124 is spiteful. That fits with the poetry. I feel like it gives me a sense that this book is going to be, I don't want to say challenging to read. I don't want to say difficult. I want to say it's going to make you think a lot. So I feel like the fact that it's not, the day was warm, the night was cool, and whatever was tired from the day's work, it lends itself to being more of a poetry, less of a factual narrative. Not that it's not based in facts, but not that it's a retelling of a true event. So get ready, because you're going to have to think on this one. There's going to be a lot of deeper meaning that I sometimes miss and sometimes I don't miss, but it lets me know to set the expectation that this is not going to be a straightforward book. I feel it's not going to be on the nose, and there's going to be interpretations, and it's going to invite me to really think critically about what the pages hold in Beloved. Is that true? I don't know, but I'm going to find out next month. Next up is The Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This will be my first ever Robin Hobb book, and not getting into the first line yet, but the Times said it's as addictive as morphine. And that is going to be interesting, because I'm a reformed drug addict and never did morphine or heroin. I had a promise to myself I'd never do heroin or meth. Everything else was fair game. I'm not condoning this behavior, but I do want to point out that the rationale of a drug user is very strange. Like, we have standards that we're going to do this, but we're not going to do that. That's too dangerous. Even though we're all doing very dangerous things, living in really crappy environments, sleeping in carpets that are stained with, well, that's a whole different video. But Ship of Magic, it's a big one. And I will say, besides this, because I don't believe it's going to be as addictive as morphine or any of the drugs that I did, but I understand the hyperbole. And I hope it is. I hope this book is one that just grabs me, because it's 800 pages, and I want to feel like I'm flying through it and not like it's a slog. This has gotten so much recommendations on almost every video I ever watched on BookTube before I even started reading, and it always intimidated me, but Random Picker chose it, and I'm going to do it. I really like the texture of this book, and I like the cover, but let's check out the first line. Man, I can't even confidently pronounce the first word because it's a name. Kenneth, I'm going to go with Kenneth walked the tide line, heedless of the salt waves that washed around his boots as it licked the sandy beach clean of his tracks. That line gives me a bit of setting, and it gives me a little glimpse of character. I would assume this, what was it, Kenneth? Yeah, Kenneth is going through something, either aloof by nature or has been through something and not really paying attention or concerning himself or herself with, did it say he or she? He. Okay. I skipped the line too to get the confirmation of pronoun, but he might be a character who isn't paying attention, who has gone through something, so he's dazed and not focusing, and maybe that's going to be a character trait, I don't know, but it's a lovely bit of prose. I like the lick and salt because salt lick is a thing, and it conjures up nice imagery of how the waves are interacting, and if that's sort of the vibe of the way she writes, then I'm happy with that. Does it tell me much about the book or get me excited to read it? No, it doesn't. But what it does do is it gives me hope that I'm going to enjoy it, because the first line isn't a turnoff. And I like the way she's describing this very brief moment. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I appreciate the fact that the ship of magic started out with a line that lets me know a little bit about her prose and the way she describes things. I really don't know anything about this except for the fact that they're like sentient boats, ships. Sorry, I don't want to diminish the ships out there and rob them of their glory of being a ship, not a boat. Also a fan of ravens, as maybe, it hurts my arm. I have a raven tattoo. Part of my sleeve is a raven, so I'm digging the cover art. Honestly, more than the first line, I really like the texture of the book and the cover. So maybe that's an unfair advantage to it, but I have sensory things that really make me happy, and this book is doing it for me more than the first line. Next up is Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I'm really sorry if that's not how you pronounce the name, but Remains of the Day. Again, another one that came to me by, way of what should we read if you're a reader? What do you have to read, the must-reads of your lifetime? Again, the second Nobel Prize, so accidentally I have 2 Nobel Prize winning books set against a couple of fantasy books. Well, I don't know if the last one's fantasy. I take that back. The last one is not fantasy. It is a serial killer story, so quite a bit different. Although serial killers do have fantasy, so maybe that's what I meant. Anyway, Remains of the Day. Let's look at the first line. That's a long prologue. Okay, well, I haven't gotten the first line, but the prologue, it makes me scared because there's so few indents. I like indented paragraphs, and when it's too blocky like this, I get super overwhelmed, and somehow it makes my eyes feel like I'm not making any progress. So I'm immediately afraid of this book, even though it's 200 and some pages, 240 or something like that. I'm scared, guys. I'm really scared. But anyway, day 1, 2 indents on this page. Tonight, I find myself here in a guest house in the city of Salisbury. Okay, so it's in Salisbury. It tells me what voice we're going to be reading this book in, that it's going to be a POV. That's cool, and it doesn't tell me much. I'm sure it's going to be great. It wins a Nobel Prize. It's probably going to be great. But I'm afraid of it because the line told me very little, but the indents told me a lot. And I don't even know if there's chapters in this book. Okay, so there's no chapters. It's split up into days and parts of the day. Okay, but based on the first line, I would not read this book. It does bore me, and it makes me worried that the rest of the book is going to read like a diary that was written by your average person, which could be incredibly great. I just finished watching The Residence, and it contained one character, the character that was murdered. He had kept a journal, and when they found this journal and read the journal, the detective was talking about how beautiful it was and true and artistic in some ways. I'm paraphrasing, but this doesn't feel like that. Like if it was A.B. Winter's book from that show, maybe he writes with more flourish and depth, but maybe that's how he starts, and then as it goes, this book is going to have that too. I'm just hoping that the descriptions are increased because I don't want to read daily life. I don't want to read reality because I've lived it for, 41 years now, and I'm good on that. But I'm open-minded. That doesn't breed confidence in me, nor does the indents or the chapter way the book is broken up. I am nervous. That's a couple books now that have made me a little nervous. However, I did say these were my reads, but I do have other books I read to break up. If like something as this does not go well for me, I jump back to a different book that I haven't included here in other series that aren't, big, bold series. They're a lot more episodic, like TV shows. Some of these bigger books feel like movies, whereas the Drizzt novels, Legend of Drizzt novels, read more like a 300 and some page episodic television episode. They're not going to challenge you a whole lot, but they are going to entertain. So that makes me still say I love reading, and I'm nervous about this one. The final book is The Six by Annie Taylor. I don't know much about this one except that it was on a list of books that I should read when I went and looked online to find the top 10 books in each genre that you got to read. This was one of them. Obviously, this was in the thriller, not the fantasy. But one of the books that I want to write is about a serial killer. It's called Like Father, and it's been an idea I've had for a long time. I do have a fascination with the psychology of serial killers. I love the show Dexter. I don't know what it is about that mental state that is fascinating, but it's somewhere I want to play a little bit and explore. So this is going to be my first ever reading of anything related to a serial killer besides documentary type, accounts of actual serial killers, as I've had a passion for psychology for a good many years. But let's get into the first line of 6. Not the prologue. That's a short prologue. Okay. It starts with dialogue. Ooh, how do I do that? Because I feel like that's a cheat, because it's just Mrs. Evie Harlow. That would be the first line. But I'm going to read the first dialogue line. Mrs. Evie Harlow, you made contact with the casino yesterday in terms of a gambling problem. Okay, so when I do that, it's cool. It does give you a little bit of glimpse. It's not, again, grabbing my attention, making me want to keep reading by any means. And it doesn't have to. I want it to. So I think I will like this book. I will give this a chance, of course, but it has not inspired me to read any more, except for the fact that a gambling problem. Okay, so there's a gambling problem. That's interesting. We've already built in a flaw. I'm assuming this Evie is a main character of some sort. I don't know that. Looking at the back, young mother Evie is desperate to beat her crushing gambling compulsion. Okay, so they're just kicking right into that. It's going to be a big part of the story. I get it. It's just they made a choice to introduce it that way, right in the middle of something, and that's one entry point to a story. That's cool, I guess, and we'll see how it plays out, but it does not make me jump up out of my chair and say, yes, I can't wait for the 6. Though the cover is super confusing because it's a hallway with water, with an ocean, and then, I don't like the cover because it feels very photoshopped and kind of just collaged together. I'm assuming this is the island they go to detox from their addiction or something. I don't know a lot about this book, but the cover doesn't do it for me. I like the texture. The Remains of the Day was really grainy, and I don't always like that texture, but this is that smooth, plush kind of texture. One other thing I do is I often smell the pages of the books, and that's part of my experience with the book and liking it. This is not a great smell as far as papers go. But I'm not saying that's the author's fault. That could be any number of things. The warehouse that it was kept, but it's kind of like every book has a different smell, and I enjoy that. And sometimes when I'm not reading, I'll just fan the pages and smell the air that the pages bring forth. It's a little bit probably too much about some of the idiosyncrasies that make up who I am, but a little glimpse behind the veil. Okay, so why do I do that? Why do I care about the first line? The first line of a book, in my opinion, and well, it's not just my opinion, but a lot of people say, is your first promise to the reader. It's the way we can hook them. It's the way we can give a little information before they've even gotten into the book. And it's your first chance to make a statement, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And if you don't use that time, just like in the intro in a movie, when I write a screenplay, I first, choreograph the way the opening credits are going to be. And I put a lot of meaning into those opening credits because it's the first chance you have to get your viewer to be interested in what's going to happen. You can tell a lot through these montages at the beginning or whatever's happening while you say directed by, produced by, starring. In a book, you have a first line, you have a first paragraph, first page. The first 10 pages is super important to do all of this, make your promises, set the tone of how you write. If it's going to be dark, it's going to be light, poetic, very matter of fact. What is it going to be? Procedural, first person. You're talking about all the different things. The first line is your first chance to do that. So I always, I'm not saying I do it, but I always want my first line to be, whoa, this is amazing. And it's something I want to get better at. So when I read new stories, I'm always analyzing the first line to see how famous authors, successful authors do it. And I haven't really, besides The Hobbit, been pulled into a story by the first line in the way that I want to. I'm certainly not calling people out and saying that they're failing, but that's just my experience. My first novel I ever finished, the first line was, sometimes the only way to know the truth is to not pull the trigger. And so this sets up this idea of when I was deployed overseas and you're given the authority to shoot at someone who might be a threat, The only way to find out if that person is a threat, if they're strapped with a bomb, is to not pull the trigger. It's more of a metaphor, and it was fitting with the theme of that book is like what's real, what's false. And sometimes the only way to do that is to not be the one that makes the first action, to be prepared for it, but not be the one who's going in guns blasting, whether that's a metaphoric, mind attack or a literal military action. So it factors into whether I'm going to like a book or not. Not really, but it's something I look for and something I want to do in my own work. Now, as I was mentioning, there is a process of finding books to read. And for me, as a reader who has no idea what they really like or is trying to ingest enough material to influence the way they write, well, there's a different path for me than someone who is very, obsessed with a certain genre or a certain writer or a very specific set of standards. They can probably go to a bookstore, read the back of a book, and know if they're going to like that book. I'm not one of those people. The back can help me, but I'd rather have a strong recommendation from some people who are that way, who have really just ingested so much literature that they can tell me their feelings about it. And I can say, yeah, I'm going to try that. I might not like it, but at least I'm going to take their recommendation. That's how I prefer it. And I prefer also not reading the back of the book. I sometimes do, but most times I'd prefer that general description that I was given in a YouTube video and then read it and let it unfold. I'll be doing a review on The Tainted Cup. And so I knew a teeny tiny bit about that it was essentially a murder mystery in a fantasy setting. That was cool. That's all I knew. And we went on. And I'll save my feelings about that book for the next video. So it's a good way to go, especially if you're new and starting out in reading, to try different things and not feel like everything has to be a great book, that you have to love everything. But the only way we can find out if we like things is to try samples of this, samples of that. You might surprise yourself. You might confirm what you already knew. And all of that is good. It's not wasted time. You consumed something, had an experience. It was good. It was bad. It was indifferent. Great. Now you have more data and more understanding and more competence, so you can more confidently go forward, picking and choosing your way through this mass of paperback or music or career paths or whatever it is you're trying to find. You experience, you enact and inhabit these places and try these things, and you find out if it's for you or not. So watch videos, read book lists and start picking and choosing the ones that you want to try out for whatever reason, and just be aware of the reason that it inspires you to read it, and then find out the connection. Did that inspiration allow you to find something you enjoyed, or was it more of a feeling that you don't actually believe, or a feeling that's not actually rooted in truly how you feel? Maybe you found out that the feeling you have, the desire you have, was rooted in something other than your authentic desires. Maybe it was because you feel you should like it, because you want to like fantasy, you want to like thrillers, you want to like murder mystery or heist novels, but you don't. The more we learn about ourselves and what we like and what we don't like, the more we can understand who we are and what we do want to pursue. And then we can be more wary of the things that distract us and why they distract us. Maybe it's a desire to be connected to this community, or because we've been told we should like something. Problem is, we're not all the same, and that can feel isolating. That if you don't like the thing, that somehow you're on the outside. And we as humans are wired to be connected, to be part of something, not to be alone. We can be alone, but we have to at least have the illusion that we're connected to something somehow. And so every time we feel disconnected from that, it's a very primal urge for us to figure out how we can still stay connected. Otherwise, we're going to be alone and die. That's a very primal feeling. We've evolved a lot more than that, but those little seeds are still inside of us. So recognize it and keep pursuing the things that you think you like. Find out if you do or not, and be okay to step away when it's not something you like, and be okay to jump in a little further when it's something you do like. Until next time, journey well, my friends.